Let's get started with our talks, our fourth chat in men's things. Today we're going to talk about something that was brought up last time, but we're going to link it a bit to commitment. When we commit, or how we talked about how it's really hard for us men to commit. But sometimes we get caught up in those situations. We make the decision, quote unquote, to face the relationship and say, okay, let's do this, let's do that, let's deal with it. But it's kind of superficial in a way. Because most of the time, for us men, the one who really commits is her, not us. Yeah, when you're dating, there are certain kinds of negotiations, certain things and situations you accept. But when the relationship moves to another level, when it gets deeper, more complex, let's say, like when you've been dating for more than 9 months, 10 months, a year, or when you decide to get married, then there are certain things that, as a man, you kind of take in and say, okay, I'm going to take this step. I'm already in this. So you face it like head on, even though that's not really true. What I'm getting at is that you stay the same. Yeah, you keep being the same guy with the same characteristics, but the woman is the one who's supposed to change. So last week, someone asked me why men judge women who've had more than one relationship. And it all comes down to how we've been taught and what. We have a macho culture that's still around. Yeah, in other countries that's changed or has been changing for longer. But the truth is the real truth. And let's say this whole process started with what we'd call the feminist revolution. Yeah, this whole process of change, which isn't over yet, started with the feminist revolution because women started saying, hey, we have the same rights. When they get the same rights, obviously they say, we can do the same things men do. But that's only been like 100 years, or maybe even less. Because it's one thing for the feminist revolution to happen, and another for concrete achievements to be made. I mean, those concrete achievements are just happening now. Women are just now starting to get into leadership roles. Women still don't have equal pay for doing the same work as men. Women are still playing by men's rules. They haven't developed their own game yet. Women say, I work in a man's world, so I have to work twice as hard. I have to try twice as hard. So imagine this women's liberation started, and women began to fight for their rights, to do the things they felt they had the right to do. But even if there was some acceptance from men, from the male culture, this man still believed he was the one in control, the one with power over the situation. Obviously, there's a clash, and that clash is what we're living through right now. That clash is the situation we're in, where this macho culture doesn't accept women having full freedom or control over their own bodies, over what they want to do with their own emotions, to give their love, their body, and their things to one or several people, or in different situations. Just like it's normal for a man if a relationship doesn't work out today, he can have another one, and another one. And for a man, that adds to his prestige, like, wow, I've been with many women. That's normal. But in that same concept, for women, it's not normal. In fact, we've seen it as something bad. We judge them for it. And even among the most liberal men, the most open-minded, we still have a lot of those macho ideas passed down to us, like by osmosis. And they're still around. And that plays into the decision to commit. When I commit to a partner, to a woman, I say, yeah, I'm with her. And my role stays the same. I'm still the same man, but she's the one who can't act the same way anymore. Can't do the same things in the same way. Why? Because she's committed to me. I'm in a relationship, but she's the committed one. Not long ago, I was watching an episode of a series, and let's say there was this very prestigious man who was bragging about having organized or invited everyone to a party. Yeah, and he was so proud of this event. To all of you, a very happy rest of the night or day, depending on when you're watching this vid, filled him with pride. But the one who had actually organized everything was his wife. She was the one in charge of making sure everything was in order, that everyone was being attended to, that if there was a problem because something failed or someone didn't show up or something ran out, she was the one who took care of fixing it. Meanwhile, the man was talking to everyone, having fun, chatting with this person and that, bragging about how everything his wife had organized was his doing, meaning he was the one who should be admired by everyone. And that's still what I'm talking about. The man is free, does whatever he wants, but the woman is Deo, and thank you very much. Until next time. Thinking that still exists today. That's why when women decide to confront it, they're judged. There's no understanding from anyone, and we're facing three different points. What I mean is, our grandmothers, or women who've been married to the same man for 30 or 40 years, they were indoctrinated in the past, and maybe now they're saying, hey, wait, I have rights too, and they start to look for them. Then, chaos erupts in their relationship, in their marriage, because this man is mentally used to something else. Then there's the middle group, which is us, our generation, who might have been married for 10, 15, or 20 years. So here, there's this kind of distinction. I don't allow it. I don't permit it. But the man still doesn't know how to give that permission. The man still doesn't know how to open up to those circumstances. So there are things you accept, but deep down it's like, you're not really okay with it. I'm going out with my girlfriends. I'm going out with my guy friends. Oh, sure, go ahead. But deep down, there's no honesty, no real feeling of, yeah, I have no problem with that. We still face that. We give permission, but inside, it's still kind of tough for us. And then we have, let's say, the new generations, who've been married for 1 or 2 years, who haven't yet blended one thing with the other. Because this young man today who says he supports women or supports feminism, though that's another fight because, as I was saying earlier, machismo is about men being superior, and feminism is about women being superior. And it turns out this power game isn't going to get us anywhere because what we want is for everyone to be equal. How do we play that new game? That new game hasn't been developed yet. And because that new game hasn't been developed, that's why there's so much fighting. Because then we go to the extreme of, no, women are the ones who have the power. In many things, women do have a lot of power, but men aren't going to allow it for them. Because that's one of the most important things in all of this. Why are men like this? More than 10,000 years ago, much more, men took power within the community, within the family. They took ownership of that power. Originally, the ones who made decisions in cultures and communities were women. It was a matriarchal structure. But then, due to certain kinds of geopolitical processes, man, let's say, at a certain opportunity at a specific moment, said, I'm going to take control for now to save this situation because maybe I'm stronger, because maybe I don't know what. So, okay, I'm going to take control now. It was going to become patriarchal for a minute or for a process. But when man said, wow, this is really comfortable, being here, making decisions, and having the woman do all the other work is pretty cool. That's why he decided to leave it like that. And over time, it became traditional. It became normal for men to dominate cultures, to dominate political processes. And when there was a risk, there was a moment in history when there was a risk that the matriarchy could return to dominate. So what happened? Man designed a structure called conquest, because man is ambitious by nature. So man was the one who designed conquest. If you look at history, we see, for example, let's talk about Genghis Khan, let's talk about Marco Polo, let's talk about Napoleon to bring it closer. Let's talk much closer about World War II. I'm talking about 4 men in history who have a single idea, conquest. That is, they must conquer the largest amount of territory. That's a macho idea. That's a masculine idea of men. Women, believe me, you don't have those kinds of ideas. You might want control and power, but you don't generate conquest as such. It's other things. But to be able to conquer, they had to design something very interesting. Men were the ones who invented war. Because war, let's say, in certain kinds of strategic principles, was used for the defense of territories, and force was used to defend the territory. And there it was, the law of the strongest. That came from higher mammals, where the strongest got the best land, and so on. But someone at some specific moment, some man said, I don't need to be the strongest, I just need to have more people. So then, strength came from numbers. The more men I had to fight, who would give their lives, who would be cannon fodder, then I could win battles. And then I could get those territories I wanted because they gave me power. And that's how war was born. War, which was the act of, I want to conquer. And the other guy, well, I'm not going to let this dude kill me here and do whatever he wants with me. Because it wasn't like, okay, I'm going to come and conquer you and we'll make all this. No, it was massacre, total destruction, slavery. I would take this culture I came for and dominate it to the extreme. And the idea was to destroy it, to subjugate it, because that generated fear, which is the basis of conquest. So that when I went to the next place, the other guy would say, no, no, calm down, don't do anything here, right? And that's how a ton of things developed. That power traveled through time, right up to today, to our times. And that's why it's so difficult for men to give up that power. That's why you still see that the big companies, the CEOs of big companies, are men. But it's not because women aren't as intelligent and creative as them, but because men haven't allowed it. Because the patriarchal structure has crushed women who had that leadership capacity. I don't know if you've seen a movie that talks about the first American flight to the moon. The ones who did the calculations, who made the calculations, were black women. But they're not in the history books. They just put them in a movie now. But it was never known at that time that it had been women who were the ones calculating and doing a lot of things. Women weren't allowed in the primary structure of NASA. Women weren't allowed in the primary structure of the Army. And it's still difficult. I mean, it's only now that you hear, oh, the great female general. They still haven't let them in because you all have started to fight for it, but they still have them contained. And that's the issue. That's why feminism uses extreme ways, because men contain it. They don't let them develop. They don't let them evolve. They haven't let them grow. They still want to keep the power, the control, full control. And many men and in many marriages still live by that element of male dominance. But not here. Here we're all equal. Here he's not like that. He's all lovely. But put him in a political unit. And I've seen it more than once with this COVID thing. So there's the couple, and the husband gets sick and he's practically dying, like nothing can save him, poor thing. But unfortunately, I've seen cases where the wife also gets sick at the same time, and she might be just as sick as him, but she's the one who has to take care of him, when supposedly we're the ones who are supposed to provide that care. But it's not like that. The man gets sicker and is useless. But the woman has to keep attending to one thing, two things, the house, the food, and on top of that, she has to come and take care of this poor man because he can't do it himself. And you tell me if I'm exaggerating or not, because these are your stories, not stories I'm inventing. These are stories that are lived daily that one hears. And besides, even before COVID, I'd hear, oh, he gets a cold, and we've lost him. No, 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 he's useless. But women get a cold and they have to go to work. They have to take care of the kids. They have to have the house ready. They have to have the food ready. So realize that these are scales of dominance that seem small, but in reality are huge. They're gigantic scales. The issue among these three levels, the women who've been married for 40 years, those who've been married or in a relationship for 10 or 20 years, and those who are just starting out, is that they still don't know how not to allow that dominance. Obviously, it's harder for these women, the ones who've been with this dream for 40 years. They've already paved that road and have given this man permission to do everything he does, and to keep doing it. And there are women who are that submissive. And try telling them they can do things? No. It's just that the poor man, he can't do it alone. It's just that, sweetie. It's just that, my dear son. They still stick with that structure, with that doctrine, I forgot the word, that doctrine they were educated with. What happens is that they are now the grandmothers of our children, and that gets passed on by osmosis. Both the grandfather's machismo is passed on by osmosis to the grandchildren, because it's the example of what they see daily. And just as the grandfather was macho, they also see the grandmother as macho. And those structures get passed on. So, we still haven't broken that chain of teaching, that pedagogical chain. We haven't broken it. For those who are here in the middle, they still have this influence because these grandparents, who are their parents, are the ones who continue to educate our children transmitting that machismo to them. So it's a struggle because, well, I don't want him to be macho, but I also don't know, as a man in this middle structure, I still don't know how not to be. I know I wouldn't want to be because society says being macho isn't good anymore. But I say, okay, so how do I stop being one? Because I don't know. I ignore my capacity for machismo. I ignore it. I don't understand it. I don't know what it's like. But even so, I'm still macho. I continue to be macho, but I ignore it. And my children, then, the grandparents, pass it to my children. And I pass ideas to my children. And if they're hidden, they're tucked away there like a secret. We're not yet on the path of change. We're just starting that path. We're taking the first step after 100 years of the feminist revolution. We're just taking the first step, and we haven't finished taking it. That's why all this that we're doing here is so that you, the ones who are starting to think about how we equalize this score, how we tell our children, hey, being macho is this, and it's not good because of that. Find your own path. Free yourself from machismo, because machismo is something you have to free yourself from. You have to be free to be able to think in a new way, because being feminist isn't going to be the answer either. That will take me to another point of control. Maybe we have to get there, but then there must be a point of balance. The thing is, that takes a long time, and we're just starting. So that's a point to analyze. Last time, someone said to me, well, but then what does that do? Because you don't know these guys, and you tell us they're all damaged from the factory. Yes, we're all damaged from the factory. But that doesn't mean we can't be, let's say, repaired, that there's no hope. Of course there is. Because when a man finds his point of balance, when he overcomes his own machismo, when he frees himself from his machismo, man is an amazing creature. The thing is, they also seem to be endangered. Even back in Isabel Allende's time, in one of her first articles for a magazine, she said that the man who is good and perfect, who is a good husband, is endangered. And that was around the 60s, in 68, imagine? And already at that time, men were endangered, good men. But we weren't even in a macho universe yet. Much more macho at the end of the 60s and beginning of the 70s than it is now. But even so, finding good men is difficult. Why? Because nobody has noticed that we're damaged. How are we going to repair them if we haven't admitted it? If we haven't told the truth? If we haven't said to ourselves, hey, yeah, we're messed up, and we don't want to realize it? But how are we going to want to realize it if, when we admit we're messed up, we understand that we're one step away from ceding control or sharing power? And staying in power is extremely intoxicating. It's extremely attractive. It traps you in incredible ways. Because a man in that same context, let's say in Isabel Allende's time, she worked, took care of the children, and she had to come home at night to write her notes, the articles for her magazine that they asked for. I need you to do this. Write this article for me. So she would come home at night to write. And her husband was sitting there watching television while she had to attend to the children, attend to the food, and do her work. So there are a lot of things there that, if you look at them, you say, hey, yeah, my husband still on Sunday mornings sits there. But it's like this. He sits down and says, he starts watching television, and I have to do the laundry, attend to the children, make lunch, make breakfast. I don't know what. What's your current situation in your relationship? Is that man who's there committed? Because you have to start doing tests to check this man's emotional health. So it's a bit about that, and we're going to talk about that next week, about how to test, how to put these men to the test. There's a bit of a very funny trick there, and I'm also going to present a book to you that you'll be able to read, and you'll find what we're seeing here much more in depth. So, if you have any questions or concerns, you know you can write to here internally through the communication channels on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For now, I'll leave you because there are a lot of internet problems. So today, anyway, we were going to make the program quite short for this very reason, because where we are now, internet failures started due to the rain and these things that happen here in Bogota at these times. So, I think you now have a very clear idea that this is about a power struggle. And we men have been in that power for too long. And obviously, getting down from there by our own choice isn't going to be easy. That's not going to be achieved that easily, but it's necessary. It's necessary that someday we come to understand that men and women are equal. At that moment, relationships and families and communities will have a positive change. But we have to start now. And you who are out there listening and watching are part of that change. That's why we need this information to start changing, to start doing things differently. With information, not just randomly, but with information. That's why my mission in this way is to provide the greatest amount of information from the point of view of a man who is still macho. Because I say, there are things I hadn't even realized. And I thought, yeah, I was, and I didn't realize it. Because one doesn't think about things, one acts, but one didn't say, that didn't seem normal to me, until, no, that's a macho attitude. So, from my point of view of being a sinner, and at the same time having begun to see the light, to admit certain things, then I offer you that information. Any doubt, any concern, any additional thing you have, well, I'm here to receive it. I send many greetings to Bermejo Javier over there in the United States, who has also been very attentive to all of this and has given me many recommendations that we're going to put into practice starting next week. To all of you, a very happy rest of the night or day, depending on when you're watching this video, and thank you very much. Until next time.